The other day an acquaintance asked me to sharpen one of their knives, and so I thought I'd show a process, or maybe a few different processes, how I sharpen, easy ways, maybe a more thorough job. The first thing you want to do is assess the edge. This one's pretty dull. I can rub my finger all along here and it doesn't really slice. And I'm really not really worried about me slicing my fingers at all. So it's pretty dull. I can feel chips along the edge of this knife, microchips that I don't know if I can get it to show on camera. Probably not. I don't know how close I can bring this in here, but there are some microchips all along the edge. You can feel that. And I like to use phone book paper to test the edge as a default. Let's see how she does. Oh, it actually slices. Some places it catches, kind of tears a little bit. Not horrible. If I give it enough... Oh, that's not good. So it sort of cuts through foam book paper, but not so well. Yeah. Just depends on where you start. It's useful to know what kind of a steel you're dealing with. This is a Japanese-made knife clad in soft stainless steel. The core is, it doesn't tell me. I looked this knife up. It says made in Japan there by Kai Corporation. Can that focus? Will it focus? No, maybe not. There we go. Yeah, that's the branding there. Most likely it's something like an AUS 8A steel. Because it's a very common Japanese steel, it's not surprised that the company isn't bragging about the steel on their website. The difference between a typical German steel such as X50 CR 13 MOV, 15 MOV, those types of steels, they can't be hardened as much. An optimal hardness for those German steels are around 56 on the Rockwell, whereas the Japanese steels will go from 58 to 61. And I'm just talking about stainless steels, not carbon steels. They will all have varying degrees of carbon content. But the Japanese knives, while they can take a sharper edge because of the harder hardness, they're more likely to chip out. And so therefore they're not going to respond as well to a steel, a typical steel. You can strop them, however, and get fairly good results. So if I were to take this knife and strop it, what it will do, it will polish out some of those dented areas. It doesn't fold over as much, as I said. The edge is going to be chippier. And if there are any folded over areas, this will also straighten it out. This knife is a little bit beyond just stropping, which is why I've got my sharpening stones out here, my Japanese water stones. But I just wanted to show you what you could do just with a quick strop job and how much you can improve the edge if you're in a hurry. And this is how I maintain the edge of my knives day to day, so I don't have to pull out my sharpening stones and spend the time doing it as often. This is a strop that I made out of those paint sticks that you can get at the hardware store. I glued two pieces together, sanded it down so it didn't have any sharp edges, glued a piece of leather on, and this side has a sharpening compound on it, and this side is just leather. Just depends on the situation. I'll kind of go back and forth. So that didn't take too long at all. Is it any better? Let's find out. Maybe not. Yeah, as I said, in this case, it's a little too far gone. Oh, maybe a little bit better. It's hard to see. Yeah, not much though. Depending upon the steel, it will respond better to stropping or not. So, as I said, a little bit beyond the point of stropping. Maybe in the future I will show you an instance where the stropping will restore the edge. So here are my water stones. I have different options. This is just a tray that I bought at the Container Store. You can buy expensive, I think they're called like a sharpening pond or something like that. Hundreds of dollars for those setups. This thing was, I think, maybe $10, $15, somewhere in there. I got these drawer liner things that keep it from sliding around. This is a jeweler's block that I bought off Amazon, and that elevates the stone so that when I put it on here, I'm not rubbing my knuckles against the edge of the tray. The tray is here just so that I don't make a mess all over the counter. It contains it, so it's a handy sort of a setup. So instead of spending a ton of money on something like this, probably everything here cost me less than $30, which may seem like a lot to some people, but it's not that bad, the grand scheme of things. Okay, I'm going to start with, this is a number 320 water stone. It's a splash and go stone, which means I don't have to soak it, which is really handy, so I really love this stone. So let's see what we can do. The edge angle here, I'm just going to feel that edge here. And the knife is not that long, but I have to sharpen it in sections. And if I've gotten my angle right, and this is the toughest thing when you're first trying to learn how to sharpen, is getting that angle right. I mean, as long as you maintain a consistent angle, you will eventually get the job done, but that's something that a lot of practice and experience, and you'll start to feel it. So I can already feel a burr forming on that edge, all along that edge. So that means that this side I've reached the edge and it's rolling over. So sometimes I don't quite get it right, but that time I did. I flip it, go to the other side, and I can hear the sound change right there, where that edge was, that burr was being removed off the edge. And I am not good at ambidextrous sharpening. I don't switch off my hands when I do this. I've tried. I'm not good at keeping a consistent angle that way, so I do it this way. Seems to work well enough. Whoops, gotta be careful when you do that so that you don't accidentally nick the edge, the tip. And then, yeah, there you go. Burr along the edge I can feel too. Okay, so now, pretty much that's all I need to do on this stone, I think. I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. I can definitely feel the burr being flipped back and forth, and I can hear it. That first stroke is a different sort of feeling and sound. So then that confirms that I am sharpening at a consistent, effective angle. And then I will reduce the number of strokes as I progress, going back and forth one at a time, with a stropping motion backward instead of cutting into the stone as I'm finishing up on this grit. At this point, if I spend enough time, it'll probably already be sharp enough by most people's standards. And just to show you, I can assess the edge after each stage. let's see where this is at currently. Grab another piece of phone book paper. Even if it's not perfect here, that's fine, because I'm going to take it to 2 or 3 more stages, and by that point any imperfections that may have been left will be gone. So let's see. Already, yes, much better. As I said, most people would be happy to have this kind of an edge. And I'm going to feel that edge. I can feel the stickiness of that edge. I can't press as much. I can feel a consistent grit from that stone all along the edge. People often pull this way, but that doesn't allow you to assess the evenness of that edge accurately. You want to run your fingers with your thumb on the spine slowly so you can feel. Your brain will tell you how hard you can press or not, so you don't cut your fingers. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm going to rinse this stone off. I think I'll go to a medium grit. I have several options here because I've wasted a lot of money over the years on this hobby, I suppose. What shall I do? I'm going to pull out this. I don't remember what grit this stone is. This is a stone that I keep soaking in a tub here. So it's not a splash and go stone. It needs to be pre-soaked. It's a very common, affordable 1,000 to 1,200 grit water stone. And this was a lot thicker when I first started using it. I've probably worn it down maybe 1/8 of an inch or so over the last decade. And let's go to, there we go. You can even hear the sound difference. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to establish a burr along the edge in this medium grit stone, removing the scratch marks from the previous grit. I can already feel that burr forming there. That's perfect. Go to the other side. Again, I can hear that burr being removed on that first stroke, as well as the resistance as I'm pulling backwards. I'm not really counting my strokes. You can do that in the beginning, but after a while you can just sort of feel the right time to flip it. So this is already done. I'm just going to try and even out the edges. Kind of go to a stropping motion here. Finish up on this grit. When you're shopping for a knife, an important criteria, well, to me anyway, is its sharpenability. If you're going to have a really difficult time sharpening that knife, well, that's not a good knife, no matter how fancy the specifications are, the design. Sharpenability is a pretty important attribute. Every kind of knife is going to go dull, no matter how much money you spent on it. No matter what kind of super steel it has, it's just a matter of time before it goes dull. Some steels will dull faster than others. But if you are having a really difficult time to sharpen that edge, then maybe that's not such a good knife. Just depends. You can buy a cheap $10 knife at Walmart or Meijer. If you know how to sharpen it, it will work exceptionally well for you. Let's see where this is at after the second grit. Yeah, that's beautiful. So this is already completely adequate for most people's needs. And I can feel a difference along the edge. It's not as sticky as the previous grit, but it feels sandy a little bit compared to the last one. But those chips are all gone, so that's good. And I don't feel any chips anywhere along the edge. My fingers don't. So that's good. I'm going to polish this edge up now because that was pretty easy. No big deal. Put this stone back in its tub where it was soaking. And I'm going to move on to, I'm going to use something unique here. This is a natural water stone. Natural stones don't have a grit rating, obviously, because they are natural, they're not man-made. They might not be as efficient because they don't have abrasives built into them, but a lot of these are such a pleasure to use, a good natural water stone. I don't know if you can tell from that sound, but that is so smooth. It is a lovely experience. Some stones, and I didn't use really anything that unpleasurable, is that a word? Today, but some stones are really just worse than nails on a chalkboard. And some are extremely pleasurable. I don't have a very high quality mic set up right now, but if I did, this would be some ASMR for sure. This is just wonderful. Traditionally, different kinds of natural water stones were used to achieve a different kind of visible edge, because in traditional Japanese knives you're polishing a wider area and you could see whether the edge would become kind of cloudy, called a kasumi finish, or maybe more polished, a near polished edge. It's not about necessarily getting it sharp, it's about the visible beauty and how that stone will make that edge look. Because as I said, for most people's needs, this is already far sharper than you need. Just depends, but most people don't need their knife to be razor sharp, although this knife is already beyond that. Pay extra attention to that tip because that's an easy area to miss. This knife does not have a bolster, which I definitely prefer, because when you're sharpening that bolster you just run into it and it's just annoying. So this knife does not have that. Makes it very easy to get all the way to the heel of the blade. The tip is always an area that's easy to miss though, or sometimes accidentally chip off as you're sharpening. So let's see how this is doing now. And I can take it to one more step. Just depends on how you want that edge to feel. Some people like a grittier edge. They feel that it grabs the, ooh, yes, that feels really nice. Now it feels more like, kind of like more of a silky texture, I suppose. I definitely have to lighten up on my touch. Grab another piece of paper here. Finally, I want to get this edge to the point where it'll slice through a paper towel with ease. Oh yeah, that's definitely beautiful. Very nice. And you can try to slice different areas of the edge to make sure that it's all sharp, rather than just running it all along the edge like that, which can't quite, oh, right there. Looks like it wasn't quite as sharp, somewhere right in there. See if I can work that out on the next grit. Yeah, it's catching a tiny bit. I couldn't feel that. All up here is good. Alright, let's see if I can fix that. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this stone and then move on to the next one. So paying special attention to that area right here in the heel, close to the heel. Just a little bit more. There are lots of different ways if you watch people sharpen. Some people go in sections like this and then move along. They'll sharpen over here, they'll spend some time there, then go a little bit higher up. A lot of that depends on the type of knife you're sharpening, just what your habits are. As long as you're getting it sharp in the end efficiently, that is what is most important. Okay, moving on to the next. Setting that aside. And I will do, I have a 7,000 grit stone here that I could use. I don't think I need to though after that. I'm going to move straight on to this 12,000 grit, which is the finest grit stone that I have. So this will put a really nice mirror polish on the edge. This is a ceramic hybrid stone. And I've had this for many, many, many years. It is a hard-wearing stone, so even though it's very thin, I'm not really worried about this wearing out anytime soon. This is one of the Chaucera Superstones. It's a ceramic hybrid stone, whatever that means. It means it has some ceramic probably mixed into the formula, polishing compounds. I don't know if you can see here, but there is some steel that kind of gets stuck on the stone here. It's hard to remove. It just doesn't wash off. So I can show you at the end how to remove that. I flip my stones sometimes, so I can use an area of the stone that isn't loaded up as much. Flip sides here. You can feel a burr being removed there as well. There's sort of a dull sound on this stone. It's not really audibly responsive like some other stones. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. It's a little awkward doing this. I have a camera right where I would normally stand. I'm trying not to stand in the way as little as possible. On those backstrokes, I think. I'm probably not seeing what's happening here. In the future, maybe I'll be able to figure out a better angle. I'm not used to filming these kinds of things. Yeah. Perfect. And the more time you spend on each grit, I suppose, the sharper it can get, possibly. Not exactly though. I'm just doing something that is good enough. But if you were to examine this edge on a microscope, you would probably see some scratches left over from previous grits. So those kinds of things will be removed if you spend a lot of time on subsequent grits as you go up. But I don't think it's really necessary. Practically speaking, you won't notice much of a difference. But you can get a better edge by spending a lot more time on each subsequent stage. I'm trying to do something that's a little bit quicker here. Just dropping, slowing it down. Okay. let's see what that looks like. If I still need to, I can go back and fix some things after assessing the edge. Go. Ooh, yes, that is good. That is good. All the sections are sharp, all along that edge, the very heel. Yeah, it's a little bit sharper here. I can feel it's smoother than it is down here. It may have been a little bit more dull from the beginning, but oh yeah, I can feel something catching there. A little bit of a dent. I did not quite remove that chip right here. I don't think that's very noticeable though. And you don't have to make the edge perfect. That's not always the goal. Ooh, I missed the tip right here a little bit. I can feel that very tip. It doesn't feel like it's been polished out. I might go back and fix that, but I think it's good enough. I'm going to test this on a paper towel. Let's see how this does. Try to get this in frame without slicing. There you go. That's what I call sharp. Or as in this case, sharp enough. It's clean. Use these as napkins or something. Alright. Well, there you go. That's how you sharpen a knife. Hope somebody found that interesting. Maybe I will see you next time.